Do you remember those Christmas cartoons? The ones so magical you can't believe we'll never see them again? Back in the 80s and 90s, they lit up living rooms, turning TV nights into the heartbeat of the holidays. When did those cozy, glowing moments quietly fade away? What happens when you take every beloved Jim Henson creation and put them under one snowy roof for the holidays? You get one of the most heartfelt and chaotic Christmas specials ever made. A Muppet Family Christmas was something rare, even for the 80s. It was the one time where the Muppets, the Fraggles, and the Sesame Street gang all came together like one big family. It was full of jokes, songs, and that beautiful sense of warmth that only Jim Henson could capture. The story was simple. Everyone gathered at Fozzie Bear's mother's farmhouse for Christmas, but behind that simplicity was something far deeper. You saw the Muppets as you remembered them. A little messy, a little loud, but endlessly human in spirit. The special had everything that made that decade magical. Puppetry that felt alive, laughter that felt genuine, and a quiet message about togetherness in a changing world. It was also the last time many of those characters appeared together before licensing and ownership split them apart. Watching it now almost feels like peeking into a lost photograph, one that reminds you what television felt like before corporations decided who could share the stage. It was a Christmas miracle that could only happen once, and that is why it lingers in memory like a song you cannot forget. Garfield's Christmas special was not flashy, loud, or overloaded with spectacle. It was something much more important. It was real. Airing in the late 80s, it took Garfield out of his usual cynical comfort zone and brought him somewhere different, the family farm. John, Odie, and Garfield traveled to spend Christmas with John's parents and grandmother, and what followed was one of the most touching pieces of animation of that era. The humor was still there, with Garfield's lazy wit and sarcastic charm, but beneath it was a soft nostalgia that caught everyone by surprise. The grandmother, remembering her late husband, delivered a moment that stopped everyone cold. It was not cartoonish sentimentality. It was honest emotion wrapped in holiday warmth. The music, composed by Ed Bogas and Desiree Goyette, set the perfect tone, half melancholy, half comfort. It was about coming home, realizing what family really means, and finding joy even in the smallest moments. Garfield may have started as a comic strip about lasagna and naps, but here he showed something bigger. The holidays are about remembering who you love and why. There are hundreds of Christmas specials, but very few ever hit that perfect note of humor and heart quite like this one did. Before computer animation and billion-dollar franchises, there was Mickey's Christmas Carol, a beautifully hand-drawn retelling of Charles Dickens' timeless story. Disney brought its signature magic to this classic, but what made it special was its restraint. The animators did not try to reinvent the tale, they honored it. Scrooge McDuck, perfectly cast as Ebenezer Scrooge, gave the story a familiar warmth and humor that balanced the darkness. Every character was placed with purpose. Mickey as Bob Cratchit, Goofy as Marley's ghost, and Jiminy Cricket as the spirit of Christmas past. The animation glowed with soft tones and flickering candlelight that made the entire film feel like a painting come to life. What made it stand out from countless adaptations was the emotion that seeped through the frames. When Mickey's Tiny Tim raised his cup, it was not just a cartoon moment, it was a small reminder of hope even when life feels bleak. This short film reminded an entire generation that Christmas stories could be simple yet profound. It was made during a period when Disney was struggling creatively, and this little special proved that sincerity was still their greatest strength. Mickey's Christmas Carol is more than nostalgia. It is a reminder of the power of kindness, told through characters who never age, even when we do. A Chipmunk Christmas is one of those specials that hits you where you least expect it, right in the heart. At first glance, it is everything you would expect from Alvin and the Chipmunks: singing, mischief, and that high-pitched cheer that filled every living room. But then it turns quietly profound. Alvin gives away his most prized possession, his golden harmonica, to a sick child who believes it will make him better. It is a simple act of kindness that drives the entire story, turning what could have been another novelty cartoon into a deeply emotional fable. The animation is cozy and warm, almost glowing in that early 80s palette of deep reds and browns. The music, especially the rendition of "Christmas Don't Be Late," feels more heartfelt here than anywhere else. This special captured something rare, innocence without irony. It reminded people that generosity does not come from abundance. It comes from empathy. You did not watch it for action or laughs. You watched it because for a few quiet minutes, it made you believe again in the small miracles that define the season. It is the kind of story that television rarely tells anymore. This one could only have happened in the 80s, a Christmas special starring singing raisins made of clay. The California Raisins claymation Christmas was bold, strange, and utterly captivating. Using the stop-motion technique that would later influence a new generation of animators, the special turned a quirky commercial icon into something unforgettable. It was hosted by two clay characters debating the meaning of Christmas while classic carols were performed in ways no one had ever seen before. From "We Three Kings" sung by the Raisins to jazzy, soulful interpretations of holiday standards, it was a masterclass in creativity. The animation by Will Vinton Studios gave every movement texture and charm, with lighting that made the clay figures feel almost human. Beneath the humor and musical flair, the special carried a joyful message about community, improvisation, and art itself. Watching it now feels like stepping back into an era when holiday television dared to be weird, fun, and heartfelt all at once. The Raisins may have started as a marketing gimmick, but here they became something greater, a celebration of joy through music and imagination. If you grew up in the 80s, chances are you remember the wild mix of action and holiday cheer that came from the He-Man and She-Ra Christmas special. This was no ordinary festive cartoon. It was a cosmic explosion of lasers, moral lessons, and sincerity. The story followed two children from Earth who accidentally land on Eternia, where He-Man, She-Ra, and the villains of Snake Mountain all learn what Christmas really means. For a series built on power swords and villains shouting about domination, the holiday message landed surprisingly well. The animation was colorful, the music heroic, and the tone unapologetically grand. Even Skeletor, one of television's most iconic villains, ends up showing a rare moment of kindness, a small but unforgettable gesture that defined the heart of the special. Like many shows from that decade, it balanced toy marketing with real warmth and somehow made it work. It was everything 1980s children's television did best: loud, imaginative, and full of heart. Looking back now, it is almost impossible not to smile at the earnestness of it all. In a world of irony, He-Man and She-Ra's Christmas feels like pure sincerity, something television has not made in a long time. Few specials captured the feeling of magic and mischief like the Smurfs Christmas special. Long before endless reboots and digital effects, this hand-drawn episode reminded viewers why the little blue characters became household icons. The story began with Gargamel's usual scheming but quickly turned into something bigger, a tale about generosity, forgiveness, and the spirit of the season. The animation, drenched in soft blues and whites, looked like a winter postcard come to life. The Smurfs' village felt alive with laughter, music, and that sense of unity that defined the series. This special was a perfect example of how simple storytelling could still move hearts. It showed that heroism did not always mean fighting. Sometimes it just meant caring for your neighbor, even when times were tough. For children growing up in the early 80s, it was one of the first introductions to the idea that kindness could be powerful. The Smurfs may have been tiny, but their Christmas message was huge. Watching it now feels like rediscovering a piece of innocence that television lost somewhere along the way. If there is one Christmas special that could be described as spiritual without being preachy, it would be The Bells of Fraggle Rock. This episode of Jim Henson's beloved show dealt with faith, doubt, and the meaning of tradition, themes rarely explored in children's television at the time. As the Fraggles prepared to celebrate the Festival of the Bells, Gobbo set out to prove that the ceremony was meaningless, only to rediscover its importance in his own way. The writing was poetic, the puppetry otherworldly, and the atmosphere unlike anything else on television. It was gentle, slow, and contemplative, reminding viewers that belief is not about proof, it is about hope. The haunting bell sounds and soft choral music gave it a tone closer to a fable than a cartoon. It was also deeply emotional for older viewers who saw reflections of their own doubts and rediscoveries in Gobbo's journey. Jim Henson had a gift for creating joy out of sincerity, and this special was one of his finest examples. Watching it today feels like lighting a candle in a dark room, quiet, beautiful, and deeply human. Rankin and Bass were already legends in Christmas animation, but The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus might be their most ambitious and overlooked masterpiece. Adapted from L. Frank Baum's novel, this special reimagined Santa not as a jolly old man, but as a mythic hero raised by forest spirits and immortals. The animation was a mix of stop-motion artistry and fantasy grandeur, blending warmth with mystery. It felt different from their earlier works like Rudolph or Frosty, darker, more mystical, and deeply emotional. The story showed Santa's entire journey, from a lost child to a symbol of giving, battling despair, and even death along the way. It was about why generosity matters, and how even one person's kindness can become eternal. The puppets were beautifully crafted, the narration solemn yet comforting, and the music hauntingly beautiful. It was one of those specials that children watched in awe without fully understanding, only to grow up and realize just how profound it really was. This was Rankin and Bass closing an era of handmade magic, an era that, once gone, could never truly return. Before Toy Story ever hit the big screen, there was The Christmas Toy. This Jim Henson special told the story of toys that came to life when humans were not looking, long before Pixar turned that idea into a cultural phenomenon. Rugby the Tiger believed he would be the new Christmas present again this year, only to learn that being loved once does not mean being loved forever. The puppets, animated with that signature Henson warmth, brought emotion and personality to every frame. It was whimsical, but also unexpectedly mature. The story explored jealousy, friendship, and acceptance, with humor and heartbreak in equal measure. Every scene inside the playroom felt alive, from the soft lighting to the sounds of laughter fading through the house. It reminded viewers that childhood magic does not just live in toys, it lives in the love that gives them meaning. The Christmas Toy was imaginative storytelling at its purest, proving that Henson's creations could reach both children and adults on completely different levels. It is one of those specials that stays with you long after the credits fade, quietly beautiful and impossible to forget. When a show about busting ghosts takes on the spirit of Christmas, you get something strange, spooky, and surprisingly heartfelt. The real Ghostbusters Christmas episode, titled Xmas Marks the Spot, found the team accidentally trapping the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. Without them, Scrooge never learned his lesson, and suddenly, the entire timeline of Christmas itself was at stake. The tone balanced humor and eeriness perfectly, proving that even a show built on slime and science could tell a story about redemption. The animation had that gritty, shadowy glow unique to 1980s television, and the writing leaned into Dickens's moral lessons without ever feeling heavy-handed. It asked the question, what would the world look like if no one ever learned to care again? Peter, Ray, Egon, and Winston did not just save the day, they saved the holiday. It was a reminder that even the most cynical hearts could find light in the dark. Watching it now, you can almost smell the dusty VHS tape, feel the warmth of static on an old television, and remember when even ghost stories could end with hope instead of fear. The Care Bears took on one of the most ambitious projects of their time with the Nutcracker suite, transforming Tchaikovsky's ballet into a bright, candy-colored adventure. It was bold, imaginative, and a little surreal, a perfect match for the gentle optimism of the Care Bears universe. The story followed Cheer Bear and friends as they helped a girl named Anna defeat the evil vizier and rescue the Nutcracker prince. It was more than a retelling. It was a message about courage, kindness, and believing in yourself, even when the odds seemed impossible. The animation shimmered with soft pastels, dreamlike sequences, and Christmas sparkle. The music borrowed from the original ballet but reimagined it through Saturday morning simplicity, turning classical grandeur into childlike wonder. Like many specials from the 1980s, it was part fantasy, part moral lesson, and completely sincere. Watching it today, you can feel the nostalgia in every frame. It was a time when Saturday mornings promised magic, when the Care Bears' message of love was enough to make a world feel safe. And in a decade filled with cynicism and consumerism, this gentle story about heart and hope stood quietly apart. Somehow, the Stone Age and Victorian England met halfway in the Flintstones Christmas Carol. This was one of the last great Hanna-Barbera holiday specials, and it worked far better than anyone expected. Fred Flintstone stepped into the role of Ebenezer Scrooge, and through the play he performed, he began to live out the lessons of Dickens's story himself. The special was filled with clever prehistoric puns, but beneath the laughs was genuine emotion. Fred's ego and bluster melted away to reveal warmth and humanity, something that defined the original show at its best. The animation had that glossy 1990s polish, but the spirit of the 1960s Flintstones still shone through. It balanced nostalgia with reinvention, showing that even long-running characters could find new heart in an old story. The music was joyful, the pacing brisk, and the humor just corny enough to make it timeless. It reminded families that no matter how many times the story of Scrooge is told, the message never gets old. In its own odd way, Bedrock managed to feel a little like Christmas Eve, familiar, funny, and unexpectedly touching. When Yogi Bear escaped from Jellystone Park that Christmas, he was not looking for trouble, just a good holiday meal. What followed became one of the most cheerful crossover specials of the early 1980s. Yogi Bear's all-star comedy Christmas capper gathered nearly every Hanna-Barbera character for a wild, heartwarming holiday adventure. Yogi, Boo Boo, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, and even Fred Flintstone came together to help a lonely little girl who ran away from home. It was a rare moment when a studio brought all its animated icons into one big story, something that today would be almost impossible. The animation sparkled with the bright, festive colors of early 80s television, and the humor was as cozy as the firelight that flickered across the screen. The special blended slapstick comedy with real sentiment, proving that laughter and kindness could share the same stage. Yogi may have been smarter than the average bear, but this time, he was also a symbol of generosity. It captured the purest essence of holiday cartoons, chaotic, charming, and full of heart. To describe Pee-wee's Playhouse Christmas special in one word would be impossible. You simply had to experience it. It was loud, glittery, and completely unlike anything else on television. Hosted by Pee Wee Herman in his kaleidoscopic playhouse, this special featured an avalanche of celebrity guests, from Cher and Grace Jones to Little Richard and Oprah Winfrey. Beneath the outrageous set design and camp humor, though, was something deeply sincere. Pee-wee celebrated inclusion before it became a buzzword. Everyone, from drag icons to gospel choirs, found a seat at his Technicolor table. The puppets cracked jokes, the decorations sparkled like confetti dreams, and the spirit of Christmas filled the air with pure chaos and joy. It was silly, surreal, and a perfect reflection of the 1980s, when weirdness was not only accepted, but celebrated. Beneath all the noise, Pee-wee's wide-eyed innocence reminded viewers that Christmas is for everyone, no matter how unconventional. It is still one of the most unique holiday specials ever made, a time capsule of joy and creative freedom that television has never truly recaptured. Alf was known for sarcasm, slapstick, and an unhealthy obsession with eating cats. But Alf's Special Christmas revealed a softer side of the wisecracking alien. The two-part holiday episode took the Tanner family and viewers on an emotional roller coaster that no one expected. It pulled away the layers of sarcasm to show the heart underneath, turning a character built for laughs into one that could make you cry. It reminded people that comedy and compassion were not opposites. They were part of the same human story. It started as comedy and ended as something much deeper. Alf stumbles upon a hospital where he meets a terminally ill girl and learns what it means to truly give. The humor took a backseat to raw emotion, and the result was one of the most moving television moments of the decade. The lighting, the music, and the performances all leaned into sincerity, not spectacle. It was about loss, compassion, and the strange ways that hope finds us, even when we least expect it. For a sitcom built on absurdity, this was courage, a willingness to be heartfelt in a world that rarely allowed that kind of vulnerability. People who watched it still remember the lump in their throat it left behind. It was proof that even the funniest alien in television history could make audiences believe in miracles. Some Christmas specials shout for attention. This one whispered. Babar and Father Christmas was a quiet, beautifully drawn story about kindness and discovery. Based on Jean de Brunhoff's classic books, it followed the beloved Elephant King on a journey from his jungle kingdom to find Santa Claus. The animation was elegant and distinctly European, with hand-painted backgrounds that looked like storybook pages brought to life. It carried the grace of an old watercolor painting, with every frame breathing calm and sincerity. Even the smallest gestures, a smile, a snowfall, felt filled with emotion. The pacing was gentle, the narration soothing, and the moral simple. Generosity and belief know no borders. Unlike the flashier American specials of its time, Babar embraced calm reflection over noise and spectacle. It invited children to slow down, listen, and dream. Every scene felt wrapped in warmth, like an old bedtime story told beside a glowing tree. It also carried a message that resonated far beyond its audience, that Christmas was not about receiving, but about seeking connection. For families watching it in the 80s, it was an escape into a softer world, one filled with grace and wonder. There is something timeless about that quiet courage, and it still lingers today in the memory of those who watched it once upon a December. The Town Santa Forgot was one of those hidden gems that quietly left an imprint on an entire generation. Narrated by Dick Van Dyke, it told the story of Jeremy Creek, a spoiled child who wrote an impossibly long Christmas list, only for Santa to deliver the toys to a poor town instead. What followed was a simple, profound lesson in gratitude. The animation carried that early 90s look, bright, rounded, and comforting, like a storybook come to life. Jeremy's transformation from greed to generosity felt believable because it was told with warmth, not judgment. His joy at seeing others happy became the real gift that defined the story. The writing was sharp, with a rhythm that felt almost musical, and the narration by Van Dyke added warmth and wisdom. It was moral storytelling done right. No lectures, no cynicism, just sincerity. By the end, Jeremy learned that joy comes from giving, not taking, and audiences felt that lesson as deeply as he did. It was one of those specials that quietly disappeared as television changed, but for those who saw it, it never really left. It was the kind of gentle Christmas parable that modern animation rarely dares to tell anymore. Pure, honest, and glowing with heart. In the early 90s, Tiny Toon Adventures was the crown jewel of cartoon comedy, a fast, witty blend of Looney Tunes energy and self-aware humor. When they took on It's a Wonderful Life in their Christmas special, the result was both hilarious and surprisingly poignant. Buster Bunny, feeling forgotten and unappreciated, wishes he had never existed. And of course, chaos follows. The story turned meta in true Tiny Toon fashion, filled with slapstick jokes, heartfelt moments, and nods to classic holiday films. Even through the madness, the show managed to speak to every kid who had ever felt invisible during the holidays. It reminded them that laughter and purpose often come from being seen, even by one person who cares. Yet beneath the cartoon antics, there was a genuine emotional pulse. The special celebrated friendship, purpose, and the importance of small acts of kindness, all through the lens of zany animation. The pacing was lightning fast, but the message lingered. It reminded kids, and maybe even adults, that the world is brighter because we are in it, even when we cannot see it ourselves. It was pure 90s magic. Loud, colorful, clever, and unafraid to get a little sentimental when it mattered most. A Pinky and the Brain Christmas was not just a cartoon episode. It was a masterpiece of emotion disguised as a parody. The plot was classic Brain. He creates a hypnotic Christmas song to take over the world. But what made it unforgettable was the ending. Pinky, in his innocent, bumbling way, gives Brain a simple, heartfelt gift that changes everything. It was the kind of moment that silenced living rooms. The laughter paused, replaced by an ache you could not quite explain. For a show built on clever wordplay, this ending spoke volumes without needing a single joke. The laughter gives way to silence and then to tears. Not because it is sad, but because it is sincere. The animation was crisp, the voice acting impeccable, and the writing balanced wit with warmth. It was satire and sincerity hand in hand, the kind of storytelling that could make you laugh one moment and choke up the next. It reminded viewers that love and friendship were stronger than ambition, even for a mouse trying to conquer the planet. Many still call it one of the best animated Christmas episodes ever made, not just for its humor, but for its humanity. Sometimes the smallest characters deliver the biggest hearts, and this one proved it beautifully. The holidays always feel bigger when you see them through a child's eyes, and no show captured that better than Rugrats, the Santa experience. It was a perfect mix of chaos, laughter, and warmth, wrapped in the innocence of the early 90s. The babies, determined to catch Santa, turned the holiday into an adventure full of misunderstandings and mayhem. Everything about it felt familiar. The mall Santa, the blinking lights, the tangle of wrapping paper and excitement. Yet beneath the humor was something quietly profound. The special explored what happens when belief and doubt meet for the first time. Tommy's wonder, Angelica's selfishness, and Chucky's fear painted a picture of childhood far more honest than most cartoons dared to show. The snowy setting, soft lighting, and gentle music made it feel like a memory rather than a show. It reminded viewers that even when things go wrong, when gifts break or plans fall apart, the spirit of Christmas always finds its way back. That blend of messiness and magic is exactly why this special still tugs at hearts decades later. If you grew up in the 90s, you probably remember Doug's Christmas Story, a simple, heartfelt episode about friendship, forgiveness, and doing the right thing. Doug Funny's world was never dramatic or glamorous, but that was what made it so special. When Doug's loyal dog, Porkchop, is accused of biting a neighbor, the quiet holiday town of Bluffington turns against them. The snow falls, the lights twinkle, but everything feels a little colder without trust. It is a story about perspective, about how quickly fear can cloud kindness. Doug's gentle determination to prove Porkchop's innocence makes the eventual redemption feel earned, not handed out. The animation was soft and pastel, and the music had that warm, lo-fi charm that only early Nickelodeon shows had. It reminded everyone that Christmas was not just about presents or parties. It was about standing by the ones you love, even when no one else will. In its quiet, awkward way, Doug's Christmas Story became one of the most authentic holiday episodes of its era, sweet, human, and impossibly sincere. Only Animaniacs could turn a studio executive into Santa Claus and still make it feel like Christmas. A Christmas Plots was chaotic, self-aware, and completely in character for the Warner siblings. Yakko, Wakko, and Dot brought their trademark blend of parody and pandemonium to the holidays. But beneath the slapstick and satire was a surprising amount of heart. The story was a clever spin on A Christmas Carol, with the studio head learning about generosity from the Warners themselves. It was loud, colorful, and packed with jokes that flew over kids' heads but landed perfectly for adults. Yet, somehow, in the middle of all the nonsense, it captured the true spirit of the season, joy through laughter. The episode reflected what made Animaniacs timeless. It never talked down to its audience. It gave you jokes, songs, and moral lessons without ever losing its edge. It was Christmas through the eyes of the Warner Brothers and their sister, Dot. Unpredictable, a little chaotic, but always full of heart. Even now, the balance of humor and sincerity makes it one of the most unforgettable holiday cartoons of the decade. The Little Troll Prince was one of those rare Christmas specials that felt more like a parable than a cartoon. It told the story of a young troll named Boo, who lived in darkness until he discovered love and light. The animation was simple but sincere, painted in rich blues and golds that gave it a storybook glow. What made it stand out from other holiday specials of the 80s was its overtly spiritual tone, a Christian-themed message about transformation, kindness, and redemption. It was a story about leaving behind cruelty for compassion, about finding warmth in a world built on coldness. The narration was gentle and almost hymn-like, making it feel less like a television special and more like a bedtime story passed down through generations. Though it faded from television over time, its heart remained pure. It spoke directly to children without ever underestimating them, showing that faith and goodness could exist even in the most unlikely hearts. Watching it now feels like rediscovering something sacred, a small, glowing piece of innocence preserved in the snow. When Frosty Returns aired in the early 90s, it tried to carry the torch of one of the most beloved holiday classics ever made. But instead of a simple tale about a snowman and friendship, it became something else entirely, a reflection of its time. John Goodman voiced Frosty with warmth and charm, but the story centered on environmentalism and corporate greed. Snow was being erased by a chemical spray called summer wheeze, and only Frosty and a few brave kids could stop it. The animation, created by Bill Melendez and Lee Mendelson of Peanuts fame, had that hand-drawn charm that still felt comforting, even when the tone shifted. It was not just about saving snow, it was about saving wonder itself. Though it lacked the magic of the original Rankin and Bass special, it captured something unique to the 90s, the growing tension between innocence and awareness. It reminded audiences that even good intentions can fade if we forget what made them special in the first place. Watching it now feels like looking back at a moment when the world still believed cartoons could change minds. It was imperfect, yes, but deeply human in its effort to make us care. It started with a jukebox and a smile. When Happy Days came on television, the world slowed down for half an hour. Set in the 1950s but broadcast in the 1970s, it was more than nostalgia. It was a lifeline to simpler dreams. There was something comforting about Richie's earnestness, Potsy's innocence, and Fonzie's leather-clad cool. The Fonz was not just a character, he was legend. With a snap of his fingers or a bump of his fist, he could make machines obey and crowds hush. But under the charm, the show was about family, about friends, about figuring life out one lesson at a time. And for kids growing up in the uncertain shadows of Watergate and Vietnam, this fictional past offered a soft place to land. You could laugh, sigh, and believe, even if just for 25 minutes, that the world could be gentle again. Happy Days taught you about loyalty, about standing up for your friends, about first dates and heartbreaks and how to be kind without losing your cool. You knew the theme song by heart. It played like an anthem, reminding you that somewhere, life could be bright and filled with milkshakes and diner booths. Watching it now feels like stepping back into a memory that was never yours, but always felt like home. Every October morning in the 1980s began with a sugary bowl of Monster cereal. Count Chocula, Boo Berry, and Frankenberry ruled breakfast tables with their pastel marshmallows and spooky mascots. But it was not just the cereal that mattered. It was the box. Kids would flip it over and see cutout masks, monster puzzles, or glow-in-the-dark stickers that made breakfast feel like a mini adventure. Some boxes even came with mail-in offers for collectible toys or posters if you sent in enough box tops. Saturday mornings were spent with milk-stained scissors, cutting out masks that never fit quite right but made you feel like part of the monster crew. These cereal promotions blended sugar, marketing genius, and pure childhood magic. The monsters were not scary. They were funny, friendly, and just the right kind of spooky for kids who were too young for real horror movies. Even the jingles stuck in your head long after Halloween ended. Looking back, it was the perfect mix of fun and flavor. Breakfast that doubled as a costume factory. Jelly shoes were like candy for your feet. Glittery, colorful, and see-through, they looked like something out of a candy store window. You could get them in bubblegum pink, lemon yellow, clear with glitter, or even lavender sparkle. They were cheap, they were cute, and if you were a kid in the 1980s, you had to have a pair. But once you wore them for more than 10 minutes, that is when the nightmare started. These things had no ventilation. Your feet would sweat like they were in a greenhouse. By midday, your socks were soaked. Or worse, you were wearing them barefoot, and the plastic would start sticking to your skin like flypaper. The straps would dig into your ankles. Blisters were basically part of the experience. And the smell? Let us just say it was somewhere between melted plastic and shame. Still, they were a rite of passage, and fashion pain was part of growing up. But if jelly shoes were a questionable fashion choice, the next trend somehow managed to make your middle school photo look like a science fiction movie poster. And not in a good way. Desktop computer novelties were bulky, beige, and filled with possibilities. When a family brought home their first computer, it felt like inviting the future into the living room. The machine took up half the desk and made strange sounds when booting up, clicks, whirs, and beeps that signaled you were entering another world. Monitors were deep enough to qualify as furniture. The keyboard was loud, and the mouse had a rubber ball inside that collected lint like a magnet. Most people did not know what to do with them beyond opening word processors and playing games like Solitaire or Snake. But that was enough. You typed slowly, saving everything to floppy disks the size of your hand, praying they would not corrupt. The printer was louder than a lawnmower and took a full minute to spit out a single page. You bragged about your desktop like it was a new car. Friends came over just to look at it. You made banners with your name in pixelated fonts and felt like a genius. Desktop computers were clunky, confusing, and incredibly slow. But back then, they were windows into something bigger. And even when they froze, they still made you feel like the smartest house on the block. G.I. Joe changed everything the moment he marched onto toy shelves in 1964. Marketed not as a doll, but as an action figure, he offered boys the same kind of character-driven play that girls had with Barbie, but with a combat boot twist. The original 12-inch figure came with a military uniform, dog tags, and enough flexibility to strike a pose or take a fall. Kids could swap out his gear, helmets, rifles, backpacks, even scuba suits, and send him off on missions across the living room or backyard battlefield. It was the height of the Cold War, and Joe reflected that tension, but filtered through a child's sense of adventure. Over time, he evolved into a whole universe of characters, vehicles, and storylines. But those first editions were pure, iconic, and endlessly played with. G.I. Joe was a soldier, a sailor, an adventurer. He climbed trees, dove into mud puddles, and slept in shoebox barracks. For many boys growing up in the 1960s, he was the first toy that truly felt like theirs. He was more than plastic. He was valor, imagination, and action rolled into one heroic pose. And every kid who owned one remembers how it felt to gear him up for battle. Before the internet, your childhood thrills came from simpler things, like scratch and sniff stickers. These were absolute gold in classrooms, sticker books, and birthday goodie bags. The premise was simple: scratch the surface, take a sniff, and enjoy the tiny burst of scent. Some were awesome: grape soda, bubblegum, peppermint. Others, not so much: wet dog, old cheese, burnt rubber. Why were those even options? But that was part of the fun. You never knew what you were getting. They popped up in storybooks, posters, notebooks, even dolls. Some smelled like your favorite snack. Others smelled like a science experiment gone wrong. The real issue? Over time, most of them turned. That once glorious banana scent started to reek like mildew. Your cherished pizza-scented sticker morphed into something that smelled like a shoe left in the sun. Still, these things were addictive. Collecting them was a competition. Trading them was an art. And proudly sticking one on your folder felt like decorating a trophy case. But if scent was the frontier, the next fad tried to leap into the future altogether. It promised technology, automation, and companionship. What it delivered was a robot that rolled in circles and maybe beeped once. Mixtapes were handwritten love letters wrapped in cassette cases. You waited by the radio for hours just to hit record at the perfect moment, trying to catch the start of your favorite song without the DJ talking over it. You rewound, replayed, and carefully curated the perfect order so each track melted into the next. Some were made for crushes, others for best friends. Some were sorry tapes, and some were just because. Each one had a theme, a purpose, and a heart behind it. You picked songs that said what you could not. Then you labeled the tape in your best handwriting, maybe decorated the case, and handed it over like it was treasure. Because it was. A great mixtape took hours, sometimes days, to get just right. And when someone gave you one, you listened to it until the tape wore thin and the sound warped. Mixtapes were not just music. They were memories, feelings, time capsules wrapped in magnetic ribbon. And long after the songs faded, you remembered the person who made it, their handwriting, their choices, their message. Even now, in a world of playlists, nothing hits quite like the soft click of a tape deck and a song you once recorded just for someone else. No 1980s. Halloween was complete without a spooky sound effect cassette. You could buy them at Radio Shack, Kmart, or the local drugstore, each promising to turn your living room into a haunted mansion. The tapes were filled with endless loops of creaking doors, howling wolves, thunderclaps, and distant screams. You could always tell which house had one playing. The sound spilled out onto the street, luring kids closer like a siren. Some tapes even had scratchy narration, adding a ghostly story that made your imagination run wild. The occasional tape jam only made it better, warping the sounds into something even creepier. Parents would press play on an old cassette deck and hide it behind a curtain, letting the sounds echo through the house. The low hiss of the tape added an eerie realism that no streaming playlist can match today. Kids tried to talk over it during parties, but the sudden shrieks always made someone jump. These cheap cassettes were the soundtrack of every backyard haunt, every garage maze, every night of pillowcase candy halls. The fact that it was just a tape made it feel like a secret power. You could summon fear with the push of a button. It was do-it-yourself horror at its finest, the heartbeat of a decade that loved making its own fun. There was a rhythm to it, the whirring click of the dial as it spun back after every number. It was slow, deliberate, and oddly satisfying. Rotary phones did not let you rush. You had to want the conversation. In the 1970s, these sturdy, clunky devices anchored every kitchen wall and bedside table. Their cords stretched halfway across the house, tangling around your life like vines. Making a call was a commitment. Misdial one number, and you had to start all over again. And when the phone rang, it really rang. A mechanical bell that could rattle your bones if you were standing too close. Picking up the receiver was like opening a door. You had no idea who would be on the other side. There were no caller IDs, no missed call logs, just a voice, sometimes familiar, sometimes unexpected. The rotary phone forced patience. It forced presence. You could not multitask with it. You sat down, you talked, you listened. And if the conversation went long, your ear got warm and your neck cramped, but you stayed anyway, because it mattered. These phones were built like tanks, heavy, reliable, and always there. They were a fixture in every household, a centerpiece of communication before everything became instant and disposable. Today, we swipe and tap in seconds, but there was a quiet kind of joy in that slow spin, that brief wait, that moment before the connection began. Before cell phones, there were landlines. And before minimalism, there were designer phone covers. And boy, did the 1980s go all in. You could not just have a phone, you had to dress it. We are talking fur-lined receivers, leopard print handsets, and rhinestone-covered cradles. Nothing screamed glamour, like trying to have a conversation with what looked like a bedazzled chinchilla pressed against your ear. There was even one that looked like a hamburger. Why? No one really knows. But the 1980s were not about asking why. They were about asking, does this come in glitter pink? People wanted their rotary phones to match their shag carpet and floral wallpaper, and these accessories delivered poorly. The covers fell apart. They muffled the sound. And let us be honest, no emergency call was improved by digging through a layer of sequins. It turned something simple into a full-time job. You had to prepare to use your phone. The trend eventually fizzled out, mostly because the novelty wore off and the practicality never existed in the first place. Still, the 1980s loved their flair, especially when you could wear it, like, say, around your neck in the most jingly way possible. Before LED armbands and smartphone flashlights, kids stayed safe on Halloween with glow sticks and reflective tape. Parents handed out glowing necklaces, bracelets, and strips of silver tape like armor against the dark. You could spot your friends from halfway down the block, neon green, bright orange, and ghostly blue, moving through the night. Cracking a glow stick was a ceremony of its own. The satisfying snap, the swirl of color spreading through the tube, the awe on every kid's face. Some kids wore 5 or 6 at once, transforming into walking neon skeletons. When the batteries died or the glow faded, it felt like the night itself was winding down. It gave every trick-or-treater a space-age look, like an army of glowing robots marching for candy. The faint chemical smell of a freshly cracked glow stick was oddly exciting. It meant the night was officially starting. Parents called it safety gear, but to kids it just felt cool. Reflective tape on sneakers, jackets, and pumpkin buckets made you look ready for adventure, even if your costume was falling apart. Halloween in the 1980s might have been spooky, but it was also unmistakably bright. Leg warmers were a fashion miracle, pointless and perfect all at once. Originally designed for dancers to keep their muscles warm, they jumped out of the studio and into the mainstream thanks to aerobics videos and pop culture icons. Suddenly, everyone was wearing them, over tights, over jeans, even over bare legs. They came in neon, in stripes, in fluffy pastels. Some matched outfits, others clashed proudly. And they served no actual purpose unless you were stretching at a bar or leaping across a dance floor. But no one cared. Leg warmers made you feel like you were part of something glamorous and athletic, even if the closest you got to working out was lifting a hairbrush to lip sync in the mirror. Schools were filled with rows of students rocking scrunched-up fabric around their shins. Some slouched them just above the ankle. Others pulled them high like woolly socks from the future. They were soft, they were cozy, and they were everywhere. Looking back, they might seem silly, but they were fun, expressive, and totally 1980s. And for a few years, they made everyone feel like a star in their own low-budget dance movie. Pop-Tarts were the answer to a morning dream. Breakfast that popped out of the toaster, ready in minutes, no dishes required. When Kellogg's introduced them in 1964, they were a marvel of modern convenience. Frosted or unfrosted rectangles filled with fruit, or what tasted like fruit, wrapped in pastry, packed in foil, and ready to heat. They hit shelves just as the pace of American life was speeding up. Moms needed fast. Kids wanted sweet. Pop-Tarts delivered both. Whether it was strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, or wild blueberry, every box felt like a little promise that mornings could be easier. Even cold, straight from the foil, they were a hit in lunch boxes and after-school snacks. No plate? No problem. The smell of a warm Pop-Tart coming out of the toaster was almost as good as the taste. Crispy edge, gooey middle, and just enough frosting to feel like a treat. By the end of the 1960s, Pop-Tarts had become more than a convenience food. They were a cultural touchstone, turning rushed mornings into something fun. And while they've changed flavors and designs over the years, those early Pop-Tarts hold a place in memory like few other foods do. Charlie's Angels was not just a television show, it was a cultural awakening in bell-bottoms and feathered hair. In an era when women were still fighting for equal footing, this trio of private detectives kicked down the door with high heels and high style. Sabrina, Jill, and Kelly were not sidekicks. They were the stars, and every week, millions tuned in to watch them outsmart villains, fight crime, and still look flawless. It was action. It was glamour. And for a lot of young girls, it was a revelation. These women were strong, smart, dangerous, and they did it all without needing permission. They were not waiting to be rescued. They were the ones doing the rescuing. For boys, it was a crush. For girls, it was a blueprint. Watching them felt like seeing the future, one where women were just as bold and capable as anyone else. Yes, the show was campy. Yes, it leaned hard into style. But underneath the glossy surface was something powerful: representation. Every time the angels walked into danger with confidence, another crack formed in the glass ceiling. And for the kids growing up in the 1970s, those cracks mattered. They signaled that maybe, just maybe, the world was changing. Every neighborhood had that one parent who went all out for Halloween and turned their garage into a haunted house. It was usually just cardboard coffins, bed sheets for ghosts, and a boombox looping eerie noises. But it worked. The air smelled like fog machine chemicals and pumpkin candles, and the line of kids outside was always longer than expected. Half the fun came from not knowing what waited behind the next corner: a jump scare, a bucket of cold spaghetti brains, or a neighbor in a gorilla mask. The whole garage would glow under dim orange light bulbs, shadows dancing across rakes and lawn chairs like hidden monsters. Even parents who claimed to hate Halloween found themselves grinning as they watched their kids scream and laugh in equal measure. Parents huddled nearby sipping cider while kids dared each other to go in first. Inside, it was a maze of squeaky hinges, spaghetti brains, and peeled grape eyeballs. Someone always jumped out wearing a mask from last year's costume sale, and everyone screamed, laughed, and ran out grinning. These homemade haunted garages were the beating heart of small-town Halloween, built from nothing but imagination and cardboard. They made every cul-de-sac feel like a movie set. Long before elaborate haunted attractions, it was neighbors and kids creating their own version of fear and fun. There was a time when men's fashion turned into a pastel explosion. Inspired by Miami Vice, pastel blazers became the go-to power move for any guy who wanted to look cool, sophisticated, and vaguely like he sold luxury boats. The look was unmistakable. Shoulder-padded jackets in baby blue, mint green, or pale pink, paired with white pants and an attitude. You rolled up the sleeves. You wore it over a t-shirt. Bonus points if you wore loafers with no socks. It was supposed to say, confident renegade. More often, it said, confused ice cream vendor. It was television fantasy brought into everyday wardrobes, and it did not always survive the transition. Most men were not undercover detectives in Miami. They were accountants in Michigan. The style clashed with the office cubicles and suburban backyards where it showed up. And once the show faded from prime time, so did the look. The pastel blazer became fashion's forgotten relic. But if you thought that was an eyesore, wait until you see the avalanche of snot, slime, and absurdity that came from the most chaotic merchandise blitz of the 1980s. Garbage Pail Kids were just getting started. Television antenna adjustments were part of the evening routine, just like brushing your teeth or fighting over the remote. Before streaming, before digital signals, there were rabbit ears, two shiny rods that stood on top of the television like alien feelers. Getting a clear picture meant twisting them in random directions, adjusting one while the other stayed stubbornly out of reach. Sometimes you needed to stand on one foot. Sometimes the only way to get the signal was to hold the antenna yourself and stay there, frozen, arm extended, human satellite. Someone from the couch would yell, "Right there, do not move," and you would stay stuck in position, sacrificing comfort for clarity. Foil was added for better reception. Coat hangers became tools of innovation. And if the weather was bad, good luck. The static would return like an uninvited guest. It was frustrating, yes, but it was also communal. Families worked together to solve the mystery of the fuzzy screen. You cheered when the picture came in. You groaned when it disappeared mid-show. Antenna adjustments were the dance of analog television. Awkward, unpredictable, and always a little magical when they actually worked. The air smelled like spring and slogans. On April 22, 1970, something shifted. It was the first Earth Day, and it spread like a pulse through classrooms, parks, and communities across the country. Suddenly, children were planting trees, picking up trash, and learning words like pollution and conservation. In a time of war and political unrest, Earth Day felt pure. It was something everyone could agree on. The planet was in trouble, and it was up to the people to save it. Teachers handed out buttons. Posters popped up with cartoon animals crying. The message was simple: act now or lose everything. Families joined in. Local events featured music, speeches, recycling drives. Some kids even marched with handmade signs, their crayons bleeding in the rain. It felt important. It felt possible. For a generation that had grown up watching smokestacks and oil spills, Earth Day was a wake-up call. It told you that your choices mattered, that nature was not endless, that small actions could ripple into real change. And even though it started as a one-day event, it planted something bigger. It gave children of the 1970s a cause, a sense of power. And the memory of standing in a park, dirt on your hands, feeling like a hero, that never leaves you. In the 1980s, trick-or-treating moved indoors, to the mall. Parents saw it as the perfect solution to the era's growing fears about safety and strangers. Bright lights, clean floors, and climate control made mall trick-or-treating feel safe and civilized, even if it lacked the mystery of dark suburban streets. You could smell pretzels and popcorn mixing with the scent of latex masks as kids darted between department stores. The sound of sneakers squeaking on the tile and the faint echo of Halloween pop songs gave it a strange but comforting rhythm. There was always that one store clerk who handed out raisins instead of candy, and everyone pretended to be polite before groaning down the hall. Kids darted between stores collecting candy from smiling cashiers while parents shopped or grabbed coffee at Orange Julius. Some stores handed out coupons or stickers instead of candy, which always felt like a ripoff, but you took them anyway. The mall echoed with laughter, plastic masks, and the faint smell of new sneakers. You might even bump into friends from school, both of you proudly comparing haul sizes. Sure, it was a little less spooky than the real deal, but for many 1980s families, it became tradition. Halloween under fluorescent lights might sound strange now, but back then, it was pure magic. Sugar highs and safety in equal measure. Barrel of Monkeys was proof that the simplest ideas can last the longest. Released in 1965, the game came in a bright plastic barrel filled with plastic monkeys that linked together by their arms. That was it. No batteries, no board, no setup time. Just spill the monkeys and try to link as many as you could without dropping the chain. It was harder than it looked. The curved arms never seemed to hook just right, and one wrong move could send your whole line tumbling. But when you did it, when you made it past 10 or 15 monkeys, it felt like a small miracle. Kids would challenge each other to beat their records, dump and restart over and over, totally absorbed. The monkeys themselves were colorful, cheerful, and perfectly palm-sized. The game traveled well. It lived in car glove boxes, grandma's house drawers, and birthday party goodie bags. Decades later, the design remains almost unchanged, which says something about how right they got it the first time. Before screens took over fidget time, there was just you, a barrel, and 24 tiny monkeys daring you to beat your best. Shoulder pads were not just a trend, they were a transformation. You could put on a blazer and suddenly feel like a corporate warrior, even if you were just headed to homeroom. The goal was to look powerful, confident, and vaguely like a football player on a job interview. From business suits to casual blouses, shoulder pads invaded every piece of clothing in the 1980s. You could not escape them. They were sewn in, velcroed on, or added as an afterthought to make your silhouette scream important. The bigger the pad, the better. Entire generations walked around with squared-off shoulders and structured poise, looking ready to charge into a boardroom or a runway. Some tried to remove them only to realize the entire shirt deflated without the padding. They were ridiculous, and we knew it. But they worked. You stood a little taller, felt a little braver, and if someone bumped into you in the hallway, your outfit absorbed the blow. Looking back now, they seem comically oversized, but at the time they were armor, fashion armor. And for anyone who wore them, they were a reminder that style was not just about looking good, it was about looking like you meant business. So before you dust off that old VHS tape or hum one of those forgotten jingles, tell us which of these Christmas cartoons you still remember. Hit like if one warmed your heart, and subscribe so we can keep bringing your memories back to life one story at a time.